welcome to the podcast of The Rise of Women's Football. Here with Carly Telford. I was going to ask you, who are you? Exactly.
Who am I? That's what I've been searching for the past 37 years. Who am I? So my name's Carly Telford. Yeah. I'm currently the women's commercial manager at Chelsea. Yeah. Former player in football terms. Sounds dodgy. Played for Sunderland. Leeds, Notts County and Chelsea twice and San Diego at the end of my career, and then retired 2022 and
so
now working so fresh off the grass, but very much enjoying what I do now. So
I still smell the gloves on your hand.
You don't ever want to smell them, so please don't say that, because anyone that's a goalkeeper will know, or player will know what gloves smell like. It's not pleasant. It does smell nice in here for those of you watching and listening.
Carly Telford does not smell like gold gloves. I'm just gonna get that out there real quick.
Just spray my perfume.
So obviously you've grown with women's football quite a lot.
I have.
I think the role of keeping a women's football is quite an interesting one. When you look at the grand scheme of growth, it's such an isolated position. When you look at the advantage of a team, you look at the 10 players on the pitch and you look at the outfield players. Goalkeeping, historically has been put in the back burner because you only give advantage to 3 players out of the 27, sort of say. Yeah. Let's start with the progression of women's football since you started. Yeah. Tell me when you started.
How long have you got?
What it was.
Half an hour, right? I'll give it a quick rundown. Obviously, so I started playing when I was 7. It was very much dominated by boys. I was very lucky that my guy or boy best friends back then didn't really make me feel like it was a strange thing. It wasn't until I started playing in primary school and we travelled to different schools and you could hear the parents on the sidelines kind of being like, who's the girl, why have they got a girl playing, that I realised it was a little bit different. The boys would knock on my door, I'd knock on theirs, we'd go and play in football on the fields in the streets for as long as we could until someone took the ball away or we shouted to go home for tea. And then I signed for my first girls club, or not signed but played for when I was 12, and that was just because I was on a football pitch with my little brother and some guy came up to me, even though my brother was like, stranger danger, don't speak to anyone.
I was like, some guy came up to me.
He was coaching some girls in the corner and he was like, oh, we've got some trials, do you want to come down? So I cycled home as quick as I could, told my dad, and he took me down on the Saturday. It was really cold, typical northeast wintry day. Mum put me in a jumper and it happened to be a goalkeeping top at the time, so when I got there they asked if I played in goal. I panicked and said I did, and I never went back outfield ever again. Fair enough. I was very good, apparently. 12 years old, I would throw myself around, won goalkeeper of the league, manager of player of the year, whatever. That was kind of my journey. I was playing first team football at the age of 14 with 30-year-old women, which was very scary and probably illegal now. But it made me grow up very quick and learn ways of working very quick. So that was really cool to do, and had some amazing trips as a 15, 16-year-old. Again, probably not allowed now. Child safeguarding wasn't a thing. We just travel on trips, stay in hotels together. Turn up on a field, play football with everyone, come home. The girls that were old enough would go out afterwards and drink and smoke, and we'd all go back to school the next day and pick up by our parents. And it was very, very Sunday league. Trained 2 nights a week on whatever grass pitches we could find. At the time I was at Sunderland, got picked up by England when I was 15 for under 17s, went on under 19s, made my first team debut for England when I was 18, first tournament when I was 19 to China, which was incredible. Moved to Leeds, was very much working whilst I was playing, probably up until the age of 24, 25 when we got centrally contracted and we were able to quit our jobs for a sum of £15,000 a year. Absolutely buzzing in the northeast. That was a hell of a lot of money. If you lived in London, it wasn't. But that's what I was doing, and did that until we got our contracts. I think the WSL was just kind of floating around a little bit, so I think my first contract in Notts County was about £8,000. So I was on a cushy £22,000. I'm living the dream at 25 years old. It's a full-time footballer, which I was very happy with because I'd never done before, and that's kind of the journey. And then it kind of snowballed from there as WSL grew, and it's been a phenomenal journey. But I'd probably say the past 10 years have been the most impactful, from probably 2015 when we won bronze in Canada to the girls winning the Euros. I think it's been an incredible journey, very fast one. If you think of it in business terms, if it was a startup business, it's flourishing it's flourishing, it's really picking up, but it's took a long time to get there, and the foundations have taken hugely long time to be set, but I think they're pretty solid in where we want to go, and I think it's a hugely exciting time to be either on the pitch or off it if you're involved in the women's game or women's sport.
You've been off the pitch for 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Hands stop smelling like goalie gloves.
It's delightful.
It's been I think probably what you said there, the last 10 years have been quite key, especially the last 5, I would even say. When you look at the progression of, particularly in England, I think the rest of Europe, the rest of the world still has to catch up. But I think in England, there's been a clear before and after of that Euros win. How did you live that tournament? Because it was obviously that transition period for you was that period exactly.
Yeah.
So how was that living?
Well, I was in San Diego, so I remember so clearly being in contact with a lot of the girls. Obviously, Jill's like my best friend. Like, we've been friends since we were like 13 years old at Sunderland. So we were very much living it all together. And I remember texting George Stanway, like Lee Williamson, when it was all happening, and just being like, what is going on? Like, this is crazy. But it was also like I was looking at it from far away because I was on the other side of the world. But you could literally see like I almost wish in a way that I was there, because I couldn't get to live it in this country as it was happening. But everything that my family were saying and that friends and the girls was just like, it was like watching a men's tournament. Like, the amount of people that turned up, the way the media got behind the girls, the way the stadiums were full, the way everyone bought the merchandise and invested, and it was just incredible to see that, like, this is everything that we dreamed of. Like, we used to speak when, like, say 2015, when the FA came to us and were kind of like, this is what we see going forward, was that we were going to win a major tournament in like World Cup or Euros, and that's what we wanted to do, that it was actually all coming together and it was on home soil. And I think we're very blessed because England is the home of football, and most people live and breathe football when they live in this country and they're brought up. So I think the fact that we did it here, and we the first team to do it since '66 as an England football team, it was just insane. But I remember being so vividly on the plane with Casey Stowe. So Casey was my manager, and me and Casey played together at England, and obviously she retired earlier than me, but we were in like, it seems so, but we were actually in tears, because it was just like such a proud moment that the girls had brought it home, but like we knew deep down that it was going to change.
You were part of that journey as well.
We were part of the journey, but it was going to change football or women's football for the rest of our lives and their lives, the girls that did it, but also like young girls' lives, which is all we ever wanted. Is that like people for the first time in that period removed gender away from everything, and when they were just supporting England. And that was the most incredible thing to see. No one was talking about them being women's footballers or girls, or it should have been. It was just England were winning, and they were winning at home, and everyone just got behind them. And that was just so incredible to see that when you really put your mind to it, it is just a game, and it is just something that we love and grow up doing, and we're so lucky to do it. And just to have that support, and then what's kicked on from there has been insane. So obviously the girls' live, the 22 women that were there, their lives completely changed. But the impact they've had on women and girls throughout England, but also I think the ripple effects throughout Europe and the world has been insane. I don't think you can take that away from how much it's probably changed football forever for us. So it's been great. It was great to watch.
What's kind of one thing that you experienced when you were younger, when you first started out in a world that was nowhere near developed, and you see that change now? What are 3 things, let's say 3 things that you're grateful for, that it's progressed now, that, you know, younger players that come in at 16, 14 and, you know, they don't have to deal with this? What are those things? I
think now it's through multiple different things that gender's slowly being removed. I think that's like there's probably more boys invite girls to play with them on the playground. I think there's also spaces for girls just to play with girls, which didn't exist. I think there's a big, I think especially if you're growing up from a young age with social media and stuff now, there's like on how you look and feel as a young girl growing up. So it's not easy to go into male or boy spaces and play. So having girl spaces is super important. And again, they were so minimal when I was younger, but there's so many of them now, from stuff that the FA are doing to what the girls did in Parliament with having like dedicated, they have to have an hour's football a week if they want to do it. I think they're just incredible things to have. I think academies, I look at Chelsea, and my last year at Chelsea, I was coaching under 10s, 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s. And I was like looking at these little kids that were coming in from school, like so excited to be in their Chelsea kit at like 9 years old. And I'm like, what an incredible, like you can be 9 years old and you come to do this on an evening. You have that ambition. Yeah, and you get the coaching and you can see them like what these kids are going to grow up to be like. The standard is going to be so fun to watch. And I think having those pathways are super important. And then for me, I think it's just a mixture of media and social media. I remember going back and studying like marketing and media, and it was always the chicken and egg. Sponsors don't want to come on board because there's no exposure through the media.
Yeah.
Media don't want to get involved because the game doesn't look professional enough.
Yeah.
And now we're in a position where we're playing in big stadiums, the sponsors, the partnerships are coming on board, and it allows us then to invest back in the teams, into the grassroots, and then that filter down into lower leagues to allow more teams to come on board, it feel more professional, but also look and feel like what we're so used to watching on TV. So the product looks similar now, and I think that's super important. So I think for me, those three things like have a knock-on effect, up or down the ladder, however you want to say it, but there are also things that didn't exist when I was growing up, and I think that if you're a little girl or boy and you're just watching football now, it's such an incredible product to watch, and it's only going to get better.
Yeah, it's kind of, I think I like to describe it as just normalising a new norm in women's football. Yeah. It's normalising the fact that women's football is just football at the end of the day. There's literally no difference between men and women's football. It's 11 players on one team, 11 players on the other team going against each other with the football.
That's exactly it.
The rules are the same. It's all exactly the same. So it's kind of normalising the way that you look at it, which I think has always been, particularly in England, there's 50 years difference between the progression of men and women's football. So it's kind of catching up to those stereotypes and everything.
And we know, look, right, everyone's not going to like it.
Yeah,
not everyone tunes into Championship football or League One football.
Exactly.
Or some people like watching men's tennis, some people like watching women's tennis. No one's saying because you like football, you have to watch women's football. No one's asking that demand. But if you enjoy it and you support a club or a team, and they're in a final or whatever, why would you not support them?
Exactly.
We are all there representing the same badge and wanting to achieve the same goals, which is win trophies for our club or for our country. So it's again, it's one of those things that seems to be you get beat around the head for playing football, being a women's football. Why would you want to watch that? And no one's asking you to. It's just, you either tune or you don't, but also you don't have to then slam it if you don't like it or don't enjoy it. It's just just don't watch it. It's fine.
Exactly.
No one's going to criticize you for it. It's fine. We all have our likes and dislikes. But for some reason, women's football seems to get a little bit of a caning. But it is what it is, and we all know how to move away from those things, and it'll just keep getting better and better. And as the stadiums grow and the fans grow and whatnot, it's only moving one way, and you either come on the journey with us or you probably get left behind.
Yeah, exactly. How is it for you kind of growing up professionally in a world where, England was potentially not ready to kind of normalise women's football just yet? What was that experience for you growing up and kind of keeping your mind, at such a young age and being like, no, this is what I'm going to do. This is, what I'm committed to. How was that mindset of you being able to push through everything?
I think it's really interesting, when I look back and reflect, because I was probably making choices, good or bad, back in the time when I didn't really know. Yeah. But also I was in probably a really interesting change where the FA were trying to catch up, or the FA were trying to catch up with Germany and USA. They were the powerhouses of European football and of world football in terms of the United States. And it was how were the FA going to invest enough to really make us and allow us to challenge? We knew we weren't far away, but also we were all part-time. The league standard wasn't good. You were playing against a professional league in America. The Germans were investing heavily from their side of their FA, and so were the Dutch and the French. So we were always kind of there and thereabouts, but it was just what was really going to change it. So there was a couple of things the FA did. They tried to stop us going to America for scholarships when we were 18, which was a big thing that a lot of us did, because that's where it was professional. It looked really cool and
And you got a diploma on the way, which is always a big standard in women's football. It's you can't play without having a diploma.
Yeah, exactly right. So we got educated and we got to play professional at some a really high level of football or soccer. But so they started a scholarship at Loughborough where they kind of wanted to replicate something similar. And it's not the glitz and glam of California or whatever, and we couldn't play games. We were playing for our clubs, but we were training nearly every day at Loughborough, and then we'd go and study. Yeah. So there was about 12 of us, and there was Kaz Carney, Steph Houghton, Jill Scott, myself, that were in that little. So that kind of helped to start staying, and that was a little kind of, and then that got kind of binned off. And then we went back, and then they started these central contracts, which again were to allow us to train more professionally. But the clubs weren't set up to do that. So again, we were just doing it on our own and having to do individual sessions. And I remember Dawn Scott running those sessions. Obviously, she worked with the USA for a bit now. Now she's working for Washington DC and doing what she's an incredible sports scientist, and she was helping us kind of grow off the pitch. But it was very you had to just do it all yourself.
Yeah, and it's a very small pool of players.
Yeah,
as well.
and you'd have to kind of meet or text each other, be like, me and Jill or Steph would be like, are you at Gateshead today? Do you want to run together? Do you want to do this?
Yeah.
But no one really knew where it was going. There was
Yeah.
little small steps being taken, but we were all working or studying and then playing part-time. And I think I remember taking a big gamble moving to Chelsea when I did, because again, it was very unprofessional. It was like we weren't really allowed, but there was things rumbling happening, and me and Jill still speak about it now, that we think when we were like 18, 19, there was probably a lot better players than us that made decisions to go and work full time, because you were either taking 15 grand or you would take a 25 grand in a secure job. There was a gamble. It was a complete roll of the dice.
A whole era of players probably lost
because their parents were like, look, you need to take things seriously, or you want to have a proper job, or you want to be a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, and like you can't do that part-time. And a lot of them did that. So we kind of, obviously we'll never know who those people are, but we can probably name a handful of them. And we took a gamble of like, let's just do it. And again, there was lots of late nights, silly driving times, like 12, 1 o'clock in the mornings, from training to Leeds to Newcastle and whatnot. But it was a gamble that obviously we look back now and it paid off. But I think a lot of us that have made it from that era, probably like the 30 to 40-year-olds, like we were just gambling and hoping that something was gonna change and something was gonna happen. And thankful for us, it did. So I like to think that now that would never happen. It's quite clear people's pathways and how they're gonna. But for me, business side, I'm always like, I want to make sure the girls are supported 360 at our club, especially because that's what we can control at Chelsea. But also like having conversations wider that women's football will never be in a place where we're all going to walk out of it millionaires, and even if they are, I want them to have something. It's a short career, what you're doing for the next 20, 30 years. But that's a different conversation. But yeah, that's kind of where I think my professional career was, and I was just kind of lucky that I kept falling into these little pockets of things happening.
I was like, this is fine.
Everything's fine. It's fine. Like, and it was fun. Like I had a great time, and half of, I would say, being part-time was the funnest times as well, because nobody really knew who we are. We were kind of living normal lives.
There's no pressure.
Social media didn't really exist. Probably Facebook or MySpace. Shows how old I am.
What were your top 3 songs on MySpace?
I'm not giving those up. But yeah, that was kind of how we existed, and it was a great place to be, and it was also scary, but in the best kind of way.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to see the change of personalities also with women's footballers, because obviously back then, again, you were such a small handful of players living that experience, which didn't have, a lot of pressure, a lot of expectations, probably. The expectations were yourself individually, and then the people around you, and outside of that, there wasn't anyone shouting at you on the pitch saying that I expect you to do this better. And now it's quite the opposite. The players experience this pressure at quite a young age. When they're coming up through academies, they have it clear at 9 years old that, I'm going to play for Chelsea. And it's clear in their mind that there's literally nothing else that they're going to do for the rest of their lives. The change in personality is quite interesting. How is it for you? Obviously, we're going to get that to later, but I'm going to advance it. You work for Chelsea now.
Yes.
How is it for you kind of managing that expectation and keeping these players like kind of grounded with your experience and balancing, right, you are in a better position right now because you do have the opportunities to commit to this at a very young age, but don't get too ahead of yourselves yet. As you said, it is looking at the long term. How do you manage that expectation?
I think it's managed by the manager, first of all. So I think we were really lucky having Emma for so long, who put really good foundations in. So I think when you walk through the door as a Chelsea player, you know what's expected of you. You don't come to Chelsea for anything else other than to become a better player, better person, and to win trophies. And I think those 3 things are a incredibly strong foundation, and I think they keep a lot of the girls grounded. We have numerous talks as individuals and collectively about outside noise and control the controllables. They're all things that are, I think, spoken about in elite football, elite sport very highly, but it's then how you manage that. I think words are easy, but how do you put them into practice? We used to do things like come off social media in major tournaments, because you only really don't need to know what the people think of you who are close to you rather than outside noise. And you can go really high and low with that, because everyone says you're the best player, and then next game you could be the worst player. And it's a really hard journey to go on emotionally, especially when you're in that bubble of a major tournament or a long season. So I think the girls are really well at managing that. I think that's because it's lived through experiences of the older players that they'll try and tell them that, but also through the staff we surround them in, which is hugely important, in the bubble the girls create when they go into this, especially this period of the season where it's super intense. There's 3 games a week. As a Chelsea player, we do not lose games this time of the season. You cannot, because they're usually finals, the league's at stake, or it's Champions League or a cup game. So that's just how we operate as athletes and as Chelsea players. But I think for us, it's just like helping them understand themselves and what they need and don't need to perform at their best, and that's both physically and mentally, and that's a process they'll go through as they grow up. But again, it's surrounding them with experience. So you bring the likes of Lucy Bronze in, you have Millie Bright as your captain, like they're two really big personalities to lean into with their experiences and what they've gone through, because they've both been at the highest level as well and played for this club for a long time. But look at Lucy, multiple other clubs where she's won things. So leaning into creating a space where the young ones feel safe enough to go and approach the older girls, and the older girls to help the young ones flourish and feel safe. I think that we've done that incredibly well. I think we have some of the youngest players in the highest club play for us quite a lot, and they come into our environment and feel like they can be themselves, which is incredibly important for us, because the reason they're at Chelsea is because of who they are and what they bring to the pitch. We don't want them to feel like they have to come to us or step onto the field as a first team player and do something else to fit in. They're there because they're really good at what they do. So yeah, that's kind of like how that building or that area operates, and I think it's a really special place to be in if you've never been in there before. And I think a lot of players, when they come into it, are very aware of the huge personalities and players they're playing with. But when I look at the likes of Aggie Beaver-Jones when she was 16, and the academy would be training on the other side to the grass from us, and Emma would need extra bodies for 11v11, and she'd call a couple of the academy. Aggie always stood out to me because at 16 years old, she'd ask questions, she'd work really hard, she'd listen, and she'd play any position that Emma wanted her to. And not everyone does that when they come over.
Did she take your position at one point?
Thankfully, she's not a goalkeeper. She probably would have. And then you look at where she is now, and she's gone away on loan and whatever, she's grown, but she's still the kid that's 16 that's so eager to learn, so eager to work hard for the... And she could have escalated, gone from like, oh, I've made it now, I'm in the first team. But no, she's just hungry. She's down to earth. She's humble. And that's a credit to her, the academy. And I think that the girls that have helped her allow her to be incredibly settled super quickly, and we benefit from that when she's scoring us goals and bringing personality. So look, it's an elite space to be in, and it takes a certain person to handle that environment. But I think that everyone that we bring into that environment handles it pretty well, because the girls are great at allowing whoever it is to come in and just be themselves.
And you didn't have that stability and that structure when you were going. You had just got stuff out in this small kind of bubble. How is it for you guys to kind of be that structure for each other and keep each other motivated, keep each other hungry, and being like, right, this is what we're doing, and kind of reason, and not be right, maybe we need to focus on something else right now? And
I think I came into it when I was 17, 18, into that first team at England, and I was petrified, because I walked into there, Rachel Yankee, Kelly Smith, Faye White, some of the biggest names and the badasses of the game, and you were just there. And I was just like a kid that was part-time footballer. And I just remember being so attentive to everything they said and did. Like if they could have told me to do anything, and I would have done it, because I wanted to learn from them, because being surrounded by those incredible women and athletes and footballers was just so special. And we didn't get to do it all the time, because we wouldn't meet up as regularly. We didn't play as many games for England. We didn't play as many tournaments. So just to be in around them, and I think they give us, especially being so young, like a lot of structure and a lot of drive, because they'd been doing it for so much longer than we had at such a lower level. But when they turn up, and they were just like the mentality they had, because Kel and some of the girls had gone and played in America, they just had like a different mentality, and you just wanted to learn off them so much. So I think that our age group learned from those guys, just because of how they were, and how they were like so driven and motivated from such a little amount. They weren't driven by money, they weren't driven by the car they drove or the facilities they played on or whatever. They were so driven just because they loved the game, and they wanted to win. And I think that's why I was like, this is so cool. Like, I just want to be around these people all the time. And I think that you now flip that into kind of us being on the other side and us trying to help motivate the young ones. And you still want them to have that mentality, even though they now are surrounded by all those amazing things. They get paid well, which as they should, and hopefully it always keeps improving. They get the luxury of having good sponsors and cars, and sponsored by Nike, Adidas and stuff. Like, you just still want them to have that thing that when they first started playing football,
to drive them through
everything. Keep driving them through everything. And the things around them, the material things, will always be around them. That's just how the game is, and it's the same for the male footballers as well. But you just always want to remind them of, like, why did they start, and why they're there, and why they stood there, and why they're in the dressing room. And that's the thing that will motivate them to be the best and continue to be the best. But yeah, I think that our little bubble, me, Jill, Steph, Demi, like the older girls, like are retiring, Ellen and stuff are retired now. Like, we just loved the game so much, and we just wanted to be successful in whatever shirt we were in, whether that was Leeds, Chelsea, Arsenal, like England. Like putting on that England shirt was it's the greatest honour of your life, and you just feel so special being able to step onto a pitch and sing the national anthem and be that small group of women that represent such a huge nation. So yeah, we'd motivate each other by that, like just how special those moments were, and to do it together.
Were those moments, obviously, again, you know, England is such a big footballing country, but it was not ready to kind of take on women's football in the way that it is now. Necessarily, you know, the sexism around men and women's football, the comparison behind that, the expectation of women to do a sport like football was just never there. What was it, you know, those moments that kind of broke that bubble potentially to be like, is there a future in this? Will people be ever ready for women's football?
I think you look at 2012, the Olympics, and how the nation, I think just Olympic mindset in general is different to like just football mindset. So that group of women in 2012 that went and represented GB really changed it. And I think like filling a stadium at Wembley and then filling like different stadiums around the country as they played, like really switched. And it was on mainstream TV, right? Yeah. So it's on BBC. Everyone's watching.
That you usually don't get.
It's Team GB. No one's looking at it as like a football. So you pull away that football mentality of like the England fan diehard that need England to win something so desperately. And you just have general Olympic fans that just love sport and are just either attending or watching because it's Team GB. And the girls taking people on that journey, I think, started to change people's minds a little bit, and people started to see those personalities and started to see them as footballers, not just as female footballers, just footballers in general. And then you move that on to Finland, I think in 2013 in the Euros when they got to the final, and that's when you started getting, it was everyone came on the journey, got to the final and I think they got to be like 4 or 5-0, maybe 6 by Germany, and just kind of everyone was like, they're not ready, like, women's football, just absolutely. But I think that was a big mindset change for the FA as well, to be like, well, actually, like, what are Germany doing that we're not, and why is the gap still so big? So again, that changes business mindset and football mindset in terms of us footballers, like what do we need to do to compete? And then you go to 2015, where I think again that was like a huge moment, winning bronze and beating Germany, which we hadn't done in years in a major tournament. And the heartbreak around the semi-final against Japan with Laura Bassett in the goal, and I think that created a huge hype around what was next in that bronze medal match, because everyone was heartbroken, I think, for us and with us. Obviously, we were internally with how that happened. But then everyone rallied around us to be like, right, we're going to beat the Germans. And we felt that. And then to bring a bronze medal back and medal was insane. And it just kind of kicked on from there. And I think that there will always be noise. And I think 2015 was probably the first time like social media was quite big for us.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you feel that extra pressure of like, if we don't win this medal, then potentially that's going to take a few steps back. Yeah. But if we win this, we can take it back, and that would do an extra mind shift.
Exactly. And also like you were starting to get a lot more interactions from strangers, because people would, your Instagram, we started using Instagram, we started using Twitter more, so you were getting this kind of feed, you were getting tagged by BBC, by Match of the Day, like things that like had never existed before. But also you were starting to get traction and like people following you and people saying well played, or I love seeing you doing this, or your training looks good. And it was really nice. And then you obviously have the flip side. So obviously when Bass scored the own goal, and just that was the flip side of like, this is your fault. And Bass was my roommate. Yeah. So to see her have to go through that we never really experienced that before as a group, or as being with an individual, having to see her go through that as well, whether it was the external media chatter or just random people messaging and whatever. So that was where like we were like, actually going forward, this isn't healthy space to be in. Yeah. For any of us, whether it's like say the highs or the lows, it's like quite the journey you go on. So everyone managed kind of themselves, but I think that sexism and misogyny will always exist. It's just how life is and how things are. I think it's just how you personally manage that, and then collectively, if you're in a group, it's sharing those experiences, and then what works, what doesn't, and then it's up to the individual as to how they want to manage that situation. Some are stronger than others, and I think it's until you live and breathe those experiences that you don't know how you're going to actually really feel, because sometimes you'll be like, oh, that doesn't really bother me, but then actually when it starts landing in your inbox, you're like actually that doesn't feel great, so I'm just going to not have that. Because I don't need it, and actually don't know these people, and I never will, and why should I let that affect me? So I think that that's super important, but I think that having people see it differently, then especially in business, helps change mindsets internally of those bigger pieces, which are media, which are partners, sponsors. And if you start changing those mindsets, actually it starts filtering out a lot of those things, because you get people then battling internally for you from the other side. So obviously you've got us trying to fight it from the pitch and trying to show that we're just footballers and we love the game. But if you get people on the other side off the pitch fighting your battles, you kind of have this nice place where actually the noise starts getting pushed further and further away. And whether that will ever become a place where it doesn't exist anymore, I don't know. But I'd like to think that women's sport, women's football is just in a place where we get the worst of it, but also we get to see the things starting to change gradually, which is nice, because I do think that filters into business spaces where it's not sport, it's banking, it's finance, it's tech, where it's been very male dominated and whatnot, but actually now you get to see women feel more powerful and empowered by what's happening in sport, to then take it into business as well, which for me is like being the flip side of what I'm doing now, really encouraging to see.
I was going to say Chelsea particularly is an interesting case study. I was talking about, like, when you take Chelsea, Arsenal, they're two contrasting clubs for every reason possible. Arsenal have kind of, community, their attendances are good, but they haven't won a trophy in 5 years. But then you have Chelsea on the other side, most successful club in England. But then when you look at the community and everything, there's still kind of some cohesion to be done. Definitely. So it's quite interesting to see the contrasting of, a club that has it off the pitch, kind of obviously not sorted because there's still a lot of things to do, but on screen. But then Chelsea have it sorted on the pitch. When you look at the quality, what's kind of the biggest challenge for you to kind of put those two things together, of Chelsea particularly? Champions League semi-finals, Champions League finals. 6 league titles in a row.
5 going on to 6.
5 going on to 6. So I've done one.
Fast track yourself. That's fine.
So we're gonna post this after Chelsea win the 6th one. When you see that, you have the quality on the pitch, as you said, so that external factor of bringing in partners and bringing in that community, what's your biggest struggle putting those two things together?
I think what people think is that just because you win, you get attendance. Now, you look at Manchester City Men's Club. They've done exactly the same. You can argue that their attendance is good, bad, indifferent. I think just because you win things doesn't create a feeling of, I want to be part of that. Yes, it does in ways that you think that they win, so I want that. But it is about creating community. And I think if you look at what Arsenal have done, as a women's team, they've been around a lot longer than us in terms of, and more successful than us in the earlier stages. So I think their foundations were really, really strong, as like investing in their women's team and the women's team being integrated as part of like a one club mentality. Where we were when that was happening was that we weren't even allowed in Cobham as a women's team. So I think it was quite new, and we're quite new into it. But Emma brought a winning mentality into it really, really quickly. So it meant that we started winning early in our journey as well. So again, I think their investment from such an early stage as a club meant that women and girls felt like there was a pathway for them as a fan, but also as a footballer, which again, we're a bit behind. So I think where we are as a club, also like we've always been known as a winning club, we never really had to lean into the community for that. I think Arsenal as a club went through that golden years of Thierry Henry where they were winning things and that kind of passion point. And even I had an Arsenal shirt when I was like, I remember it was the burgundy one with, and I think I had Henry on the back with the collar in the O2.
Oh yeah, that
because it was just cool.
Yeah.
Even though I'm a Newcastle fan, I don't know why I had it, but I did. But even that, I was like, they were just a cool team to watch. And I think that, one, created community, but two, when they were winning things. But then when they didn't and they went through that, they still kept the community things always ran underneath. So even if they haven't been winning, they've been quite a cool club. So I think that's helped them. And then you add in like when Arsenal women start winning things or start having superstars and start creating stories and powerful imagery, and then their men's team are starting to do well. You've got the pillar of community, but then you start seeding in trophy winning moments. Now whether they win those or don't, it's still they're taking their fans on a journey, and their fans are already bound to the club, whereas I think Chelsea as a club, men's and women's, we've just won things and been okay with it. So then you look at the men now going through this transition period. Who are Chelsea? What are Chelsea? And we always used to discuss that as a club, as a women's team, like what happens if we stop winning? Like, who are we? What do we represent other than ourselves and winning things? So obviously for us, we want to start seeding that into like, how are we, and I think we've done that in the past probably 6 to 12 months via TikTok, via some of our partners and sponsors through 3 and Skoda, is delving into who these women are,
showing
the individuals, showing their personalities. And actually I can resonate with her. I think we have an incredibly diverse group. Our women are from all over the world, different races, different colours, different creeds, like their backgrounds are so interesting, and we're super proud of that. And then how do we tell those stories, and how do we allow every young girl to see themselves in our team? And I think that's starting to create community. Our fan base is going up every single year, and the season tickets kind of double year on year. But we know we're not at a place where we can sell out Stamford Bridge all the time. We're on a journey of wanting to make sure that when we come to Stamford Bridge, it's full, or as full as it can be. And we know we're not ready for 12 games there yet. So and also keeping Kings Meadow, it's a really super cool ground to be in, and it kind of keeps us humbled and grounded because it's where we started our journey. I think having the two grounds to flip back and forward and is keeping that community as well. So I think for us, we don't want to compare ourselves to Arsenal, and I think that no other club should. Yeah. Because everyone's on their own journey, and I think it's really easy to look what they're doing and be like, we need to do that. But I think by doing that, it's not right. I think everyone has to do it at their own pace.
Every club has its own personality,
right, and its own journey. And I think you got to take your fans on your own journey. Yeah. And I think it's easy to compare. Arsenal fans want the trophies. We want maybe their fan base, but like the amount of fans they have. But by doing that, you create something that doesn't exist yet. So I think that you've got to do it like in your own journey, but we share. I think that's the greatest thing about women's sport, women's football, is that we'll speak to Arsenal about how they grow their fan base. They'll speak to us.
There's one collective
about different things. Exactly. Yeah. If we're all filling stadiums, we're all winning. Yeah, that's what we want for women's sport. It's no point like one team just running away with everything, even though you can argue we are trophy wise, but people will catch up. We've got to keep finding those margins. Yeah, but everyone else will keep kind of finding ways of filling the stadiums and whatnot, growing their fan base, growing their partners, and everyone wins from that. And that's the most important thing, I think, for us as female footballers. We want the sport to be successful as well as the clubs around it. So yeah, it's super exciting, and I think Chelsea's on a really good journey, and I think we have built a really incredible team now off the pitch that's helping support that.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, especially when you talk about kind of the collective. When you look at, the WSL particularly, when you compare it to the rest of Europe, it's probably the best league in Europe right now in terms of stability, in terms of finance, in terms of broadcasting, media, everything around it. But still, there's a lot to be done in terms of the higher, the top of the table to the lower part of the table. And of course there's that collective community of, right, women's football needs to be in a better place, and we're all going to work towards it. How difficult it is, working for Chelsea. You have, I guess, the investment that maybe a Brighton don't have, but then maybe a Brighton have something that you don't. How is that collective work to make an entire league more balanced?
I think that's it. Like, you look at what each other don't have, and like you look at Brighton now, I've just said they're going to build their own women's stadium, first one that's going to be in the WSL. Now that's going to be incredible. We don't have that. Arsenal don't have that. Other teams don't have those things. Man City are about to build their own training facilities, purpose built for women, never been done before. Incredible. So, but I think that obviously you can look at us and be like, we win things and we've got lots of trophies. Other teams want that as well. So, but I think by everyone doing their own thing means that internally you can go and be like, we want that as well. How do we get that? Because again, by teams doing their own things and going on their own journey, they're also creating their own moments and their own special moments. And I think that everyone's going to own their space in a different way, and that's incredibly powerful. I think the WSL as a whole are trying to look at the model. I know we've had big discussions, I think it was last week, the week before, when we got the kind of nuclear bomb of maybe shutting the league off for 4 years and whatnot, which was very interesting. But I think they're trying to, exactly. I think that everyone's trying to look at it in a different way, and how, if you look at the men's Premier League, it's usually the same 5 or 6 teams at the bottom, same 5 or 6 teams at the top. It's not dissimilar to what the WSL is. It's just more condensed. But again, it's how do the big teams help the teams that, or the big 3 or 4 teams that everyone looks at, like, help make the gap smaller. And I think even if you look at this season, we've had teams beating teams. It's not, yes, we have Chelsea are unbeaten and the only team to do that, but we've been in games at weekends where it's like 1-0 against Crystal Palace, or and yes, there's been other bigger results around that, but the gap is closing. Teams are getting bigger players are wanting to come to the UK to play more competitively. You look at Naomi Girma coming here, Kira coming back from Barcelona, like German players coming to the league. Like, it's a league that people want to be part of for numerous reasons, and that's because it's competitive every week. And there's going to be always the anomaly of a 7-0 or a 6, but that happens in the men's game as well. It's not like it's just women's football. No. And I think we forget that sometimes, but because it's such a smaller league, it's just so much more, the spotlight's so much more on it.
Yeah, it's a bit more intense.
Yeah, and I think we've got an imbalance in the middle where the top teams, the Champions League teams, are playing a hell of a lot of games in a season, especially the national players are playing now 40 games a year, 50 games a year. But then you've got the lower league teams that are maybe only getting 20 to 25 games a season. So how do we balance that as well with loading? So there's lots of different questions to be asked, but as a club, and with our CEO Inaki and our director in Julia, like, we're really trying to help the league as a whole, as how do Chelsea help in that environment, and what are we doing to share? but also as a league, what are we doing to learn to make sure that we still are the best league in the world and that every team feels like that. So it's a super, again, it's just moving so quickly, and I think everyone's trying to do their bit, but I think how we keep collectively sharing and bouncing ideas around will only allow us to keep being the best and retaining, but also bringing the best talent to this league and to this country.
You have a big leadership role in terms of progression of women's football now. Oh God, I mean, no pressure. You probably feel more pressure now than you did in a World Cup. You have a different role now in women's football when it comes to, the impacting of a long term, maybe more on the business side of it, less sporting, less on the pitch role, which you still have. How has that transition been for you? Because obviously looking at football as a player and, it's a very different perspective of kind of looking at it from outside of the pitch and realizing commercial, business, money, figures, all these things that you don't worry about as a player because someone else is doing that for you. How has that transition been for you?
It's been super interesting, I'm not gonna lie.
How much coffee needed?
A lot of coffee. Thankfully I do love coffee, so it's been a win-win for me. But I was so unaware of what goes on away from Cobham, let's just say.
Yeah.
Cobham, we know who's there, it's the staff. You get the odd person drifting in and out from social media marketing, but we had no idea what goes on, and the operation behind it to make a game run, to launch a partner, to do commercials, to putting stuff on TikTok, to all this stuff that exists, it just kind of happens and no one asks questions, like you said. But now to be on the flip side of it, I'm in there and with the girls, I'm like, you don't know how much effort. Yeah, I was like, how many meetings we've had to do this damn 1 hour Skoda shoot. Like, can you all just attend it, smile and do your thing? Yeah. Because I was on the flip side of being like, when you do photo shoots, you're like, I'm tired. Like, do I have to do it? Can I get out of it? I just want to go home. Like, and now I'm on the flip side, like, you will attend, you will smile, and you will enjoy it. Because I'm like, these people pay good money and they're incredible and people work hard to make this happen. But it's such a funny space to be because it's like, I'm telling my friends. So I'm still friends with a lot of the girls.
Take her.
And I'm like, can you just turn up and do the job? But it's also great as well because I've really tried to like bridge the gap between Cobham and Stamford Bridge. So the offices are at Stamford Bridge and obviously the girls train at Cobham and that's where the training facility is. But trying to actually bridge that physical gap of like bringing the staff down to Cobham and introducing them. This is what they do. This is who they are. Yeah. If you need them or see them, please say hello. Please be respectful. They're only trying to do their jobs. There's a reason that they're here for, but they're also here to support you and to help grow your brands individually as well as collectively. Having that kind of being able to straddle those two areas. I said my first year, I said I'll either have no friends because they all hate me, or I'll actually be all right with them. And thankfully, I think we took them on a journey last year where it started as 4,000 people at Kings Meadow to selling out Stamford Bridge and kind of the media, the new partners we brought on, the shoots that they did, that kind of everything kind of showed that if we got their investment off the pitch as well as what they do on it, they would get a buyback from that. And that was filling the stadium for them. That was bringing in good partners and things that were going to help them individually and collectively away from football as well. And I think they really appreciated that. So I think my job has been to, yes, do my job, which is in commercial, but also help bridge that gap between what it looks like business wise and football wise and help bring the two things together because one doesn't work without the other. And we probably don't realise that as footballers, things just happen. But actually the team behind the team is super important. And I think the girls, knowing what everyone did, really brought them closer to them. And I think they get on with them a lot better now. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things we still have to do, but you can really feel the impact. And the team now knows everyone, and which is super important to me because I think that we are holistically one big team as well. Yeah. And I think if you're going to be successful as a team, you have to know everyone's roles and know what everyone's doing to be able to invest properly into that. So it's been incredible. I absolutely adore and love my job. I love working for this club. I feel incredibly lucky to do the role that I do. Yeah. I always say to the girls, I'm like, if anyone wants to come in and see what we're doing, they're like, okay, CT. And they're like, definitely not. But I just think I want more people to see what we do because if you are thinking of retiring or you don't make it as a footballer, there are incredible jobs business side now that you can do and now it's your passion point that you can do from women's football. It doesn't have to be men's football, it can be both. And it's just I feel very privileged to be in a position where I help make change, and I think as a female footballer that is something we've always wanted to do, is create change and be impactful on the pitch, and now I get to do it away from that. So I can't say that I wake up a day feeling like I've got to go to work. I still, like I was when I was playing football, I get to do something that I love doing, and that is ultimately, I think, if you can do that for life, it's a pretty cool thing to say.
The right people in the right positions. I think I like that in women's football particularly. I think it's very, very important to have the right people in the right positions to be able to make that impact. And I think you've managed to be in that position.
We'll find out, won't we?
To do that. Well, I'll come back in about a year or two and be like, right. Last question.
Yeah.
The easiest one. Before and after. There's Women's Euros this summer.
Yes.
What's kind of the prospect that you have for the before and after of another major tournament?
Look, it's hugely exciting. I think for me, especially with partners and having conversations at the minute, I'm like, don't be the people that waited till after the Euros.
Yeah.
Don't be seen as the people to get on the bandwagon. Not that people are. Like, any investment in the women's game is super powerful, whenever that may be in your journey as a business. But I'm like, come and be here at the start. I think anyone that's seen as to invest in women's sport and women's football before big things happen, I just get so much more affinity from the fans and even the team itself, because you didn't just come in when you thought it was like the right thing to do or the good thing to do. You came in when you thought it was good for your business and your values aligned with whatever sport that was or the team it was. And doing that, I think the fallout from that is that businesses have profited massively with their KPIs, with their brand affinity, with who they are, the way they sit along other brands. Like, it's just a really cool space to be in women's sport and women's football, particularly, especially going into the Euros. You look at the bounce off the Euros last time, and hopefully we go on to retain the title, which I've got a firm belief, especially based off probably last camp and where we were and the players we're going to get back. I think we're in a really strong position to do it again. So for me, having conversations, yes, we have an incredible team in Chelsea, but we also have the most amount of Lionesses, which works incredibly well for us, and a very diverse team. But I'm like, come in now, get in early with them individually as their image rights, or come in as Chelsea and get to use those Lionesses, and then feel the impact afterwards when everyone will be talking about they'll be the first England team to retain a major tournament. And more importantly, bring another trophy home, which is super cool to do, and that group of women will again flourish in multiple different ways. So yeah, it's, for me, prospecting's really cool to be in sitting businesses that are excited about the Euros, but also I'm like, come be part of something that's going to be super exciting across the summer, and you get to be front and center of that. But also just invest in women. Like, it's the best thing you can do. It's 50% of the population. It's 50, hopefully, aim at 50% of your business. They will help you develop your business, change your business mindset, and be better. And that's the thing, if you invest in women's sport, like, it's full of women that are empowered, and that will just only help your business grow.
Yeah, I think that's all. I think you nailed that. Literally on the head. I'm gonna not say anything else. We're gonna leave it at that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Invest in women.
Yeah,
always. But no, thank you for coming on. It was a really good conversation.
Thanks for having me.